Welcome to the Score Podcast.
It's been called the $1 trillion opportunity. That's trillion with a T. During a time when mortgage companies are struggling to find new applicants and growth, there's an estimated $1 trillion of pent-up growth potential in the form of borrowers that have historically been left out of homeownership opportunities due to outdated credit score models. That's all changing with the implementation of VantageScore 4.0 for mortgages funded by Fannie and Freddie Mac, a conversation we've had on the score quite a bit. So what's the status on that anyway? I'm Jeff Richardson, and welcome to another episode of the Score Podcast. Joining me today for his second podcast appearance is our own mortgage expert, Tony Hutchinson. Tony is Senior Vice President of Industry and Government Relations at VantageScore. He brings nearly 30 years of experience and a wealth of knowledge about the inner workings of Congress and the executive branch, as well as a deep understanding of the housing industry. He brings this to his current position. And prior to joining VantageScore, Tony was Director of Government Industry Relationships at Freddie Mac. He worked at NAR. He worked at Fannie. He's worked all over the place. Okay, Tony, appreciate you joining us. Let's unpack this.
Looking forward to being here for the second time. If I make 5, do I get a jacket?
You definitely get a jacket. Okay, what is so significant about what FHFA and the GSEs have done here in terms of making a data set available? That's been all over the trades. What's going on with that?
So last week on July 11th, FHFA, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac released a historical data set that contained VantageScore 4.0 data. That data set was the first opportunity people in the mortgage industry would have the chance to see what VantageScore looks like in terms of a representative score at the loan level. This data set provided industry participants an opportunity to see what the score looked like coming from the 3 credit reporting companies as a score, and then as a calculated representative score in a tri-merge regime. They also did other calculations out there related to some of the other changes that they were contemplating. But effectively, it allows everyone in the industry to see for about 45 million mortgages that have been originated by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac over a 10-year period. So from 2013 to 2023, how VantageScore at origination would have been calculated. And now you can compare that to some credit risk transfer information that's out in the marketplace and some mortgage disclosure data that's out in the marketplace and see how that score would have performed over time. It is the first opportunity, again, that the industry has a chance to see this score. And now folks that have credit risk models are able to take some of this information and begin to analyze it and update their credit risk models. This is the first step in preparing your models for the acceptance of the new scores. And it's one of the major steps that's required to begin to move towards implementation, which FHFA and the GSEs continue to say is going to occur in Q4 2025.
That is super exciting, and kudos to FHFA and the GSEs for achieving this milestone. You and I have sat in meetings, and market participants have been really aggressive in desiring this information. So where does this put us in the process overall of implementing VantageScore 4.0 for GSE-funded mortgages?
Well, this is a significant milestone. This is a major check mark in the timeline that FHFA has established for this implementation. Just to kind of give everybody a bit of grounding, FHFA came out in October of 2022, said that the scores were going to change and that they had authorized VantageScore 4.0 and FICO 10T for the mortgage market. Since then, they have conducted numerous stakeholder forums where they listened for input into what was necessary in order to make that happen. One of the things that they decided to do is at some point they wanted to put data out in the hands of the industry so that an analysis could begin. The first data set to go out was VantageScore 4.0. There will be a subsequent data set that comes out with the other score that is forthcoming. And then after that, you're going to see in quick progression additional milestones related to scores being pulled and delivered to the GSEs prior to the Q4 2025, all in execution. So this is a significant step because it gives the industry practical information, tangible data that they can work with right now. Not something that is theoretical that they can talk about that might be coming, that looks at their own data where they're thinking about rules that are coming out and trying to transition to new rules. This gives them hard data that they can begin to analyze. That is a major milestone because it adds a little fuel, if you will, to the fire of implementation. Before, like I said, most people were just waiting. I have nothing to work with. Now they've got something to work with. Soon there'll be another data set that gives them even more data to work with. Then you'll have the rules related to calculating the scores. And you've already gotten a preview of that in the data set that was released, how the GSEs are contemplating how that representative score is going to be calculated. And because of that, this is a significant, not even first step. This is the first 5 steps towards moving us towards implementation.
So methodically, we march towards Q4 2025 when VantageScore 4.0 is mandated for use for all GSE mortgages. Great stuff. But GSE mortgages aren't the only game in town. What other milestones have been achieved regarding VantageScore's usage for mortgage originations and servicing and things like that?
Well, that is true, right? So this is only for the conventional conforming space, and that is the space that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac operate in. But there are other GSEs in the marketplace. FHFA also has purview over the Federal Home Loan Bank System. In the last 6 months, 2 members of the Federal Home Loan Bank System have authorized their members to provide mortgage as pledged collateral using only VantageScore 4.0. Those federal home loan banks are San Francisco, which occurred in February of this year. And on July 9th, just 2 days before the historical data set was released, the Chicago Federal Home Loan Bank authorized their members to be able to provide mortgages as pledged collateral to the bank using VantageScore 4.0. Those are big milestones in this implementation. And I'll tell you why. Pledged collateral is very different from the way mortgages are sold in the secondary mortgage market. Very different from the mortgage purchase program that Chicago has, which is very similar to what the GSEs, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac operate. However, because these 2 banks have allowed their members to provide pledged collateral using a VantageScore 4.0, it gives those member banks an opportunity to do a number of things that will benefit them when it comes time to have day one initiated for the implementation of the new scores. One, it allows them to make sure that they can receive the new credit score from their credit score provider. And that would either come from the credit reporting companies, TransUnion, Equifax, or Experian, or from a third party like a Zactus or CoreLogic or an ICE Black Knight or Factual Data, someone like that. So it gives those member institutions of the Federal Home Loan Bank, which are usually smaller to medium-sized lenders, an opportunity to check and ensure that they can get a VantageScore 4.0. The other thing it allows them to do is, aside from being able to get it, it makes sure that their systems are able to handle it, because they're going to need to have that in order to do the evaluation that they need to do on the origination side and then pledge that collateral to the Federal Home Loan Bank. So that is a very good step for a number of lenders as they prepare to improve their systems so that they can implement the new scores beginning Q4 of 2025. On top of that, and we've had conversations with the Veterans Administration, and the Veterans Administration has changed their guidelines so that a credit score can be provided to them and alternative credit scores can be provided to them. So right now, as of today, a VantageScore can be used in the loan packaging that is delivered to the Veterans Administration. So if you are conducting loans, VA loans, you can deliver a package with a VantageScore to the Veterans Administration in their mortgage program. And that is something that has been in place for a while, but not many people know. So that is great. So those are major milestones that have occurred as we continue down the path of transforming our conventional conforming and actually our overall mortgage market to be able to handle the new credit scores.
So our mortgage listeners loved that. For some non-mortgage listeners, they're probably like, wow, that's some inside baseball. So let's zoom out for a second and reset. Why is this important? What role does homeownership play in terms of, for example, wealth equality?
Well, the biggest purchase that or most people will make in their lives is the purchase of the home. That purchase not only is the biggest purchase they have, but it's the biggest asset that they will have in their lifetimes. The appreciation of it alone, the equity that you gain by making your payments is transformative. It is what moves people from one income level to another. It actually provides a level of stability in a lot of different people's lives. And how does it do this? Over time, you're able to build equity. That equity can be translated into a refinance that allows you to pay for college for your kids, allows you to take care of elderly parents if necessary, allows you to give a small nest egg to your children as they start out. Also, it can fund small businesses at times. So this is a transformative financial product that when people are able to have and then harness can really take them to the next step. And I'll just share a personal story there. I grew up in Washington, D.C. I grew up in a single mother household, and I lived in my grandmother's house. The house was paid for. So there was no mortgage on the property that my mother and I and my brother grew up in. And as my mother wanted more educational opportunity for my brother and I, my grandmother was able to help out because she could tap into the equity that she had into the house to help pay for our education. So moving us out of a inner city high school and allowing us to go to private school, which opened doors for us. After we graduated school, as we're paying down our debt as gifts to my brother and I, there was money there to help us in that transition. So we didn't have as large of a burden, though we still had a bit of a burden because I would just say that my family believed that you had to have skin in the game. But the key is there was still that opportunity to ensure that we remained on strong footing. All of that occurred because of the one house that I grew up in that was paid for, that my grandmother and grandfather paid for, and they were able to then tap into some of that equity to ensure that my brother and I had opportunity. That's the same opportunity that is available to everyone out there when they purchase a home, and that in and of itself provides a level of stability and then the opportunity to grow educationally or business-wise, but really just to be stable and not be beholden to having to pay rent into something that you're not going to have any access to that capital at a later date. Doesn't mean that renting is wrong. Just means that renting versus owning, renting is not as transformative for folks as owning a property.
Tony, thank you for sharing that anecdote, and it's obviously representative of the situation that many millions of people out there are in, and so it's an important and poignant story. My sense is the answer to this question is related to the last, which is sometimes these changes it's really slow, painfully slow. So what keeps you motivated and focused on pushing these things forward?
So you're right. The mortgage industry has been historically slow. I always liken the GSEs to the Titanic, meaning they're these big, massive ships with small rudders, and they see problems further off in the future, and it takes them forever to kind of steer around it. That's also a good anecdote for the mortgage industry. It's huge, it's complex, it's massive, many players, and change takes time. What keeps me going is this implementation at the very start in October of 2022 seemed as if there was no momentum for it, that it would not happen. There were a lot of people who were saying that it has too many parts and that it couldn't happen. What I'm seeing right now is that it's happening. that change is being made, and that's exciting. And it's being made in a lot shorter order than people have seen for other products in the marketplace. For instance, the change from the London interbank overnight rate to SOFR took a long time. The change to the new uniform loan form that people use, it took a long time to make that change. This is happening methodically and at a lot faster pace, and that's exciting. People are jumping on board and seeing the benefits of moving to the new credit scores, in particular VantageScore, because VantageScore 4.0 scores more people. There are people out there that a lot of lenders to this point have said, we know we haven't been able to score because they haven't had a score. Now they are at least able to see if they've got a score and where that falls on the pricing continuum. They're excited about that. There are folks out there on the policy side that continue to want to see the GSEs, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, operate in a safe and sound manner. They want to see changes so that an occurrence like what happened in the Great Recession does not occur again for them. This is another one of those tools that's being put in place so that those institutions can operate in a safe and sound manner. So everyone is excited, and we're seeing that change. Because that movement is occurring, that's what makes me excited.
Well, maybe stating the obvious, but for the millions of consumers out there that have been on the outside looking in, this can't happen soon enough. And so on behalf of them and on behalf of VantageScore, thank you, Tony, for your hard work and efforts and insights in this area. And thank you for being a guest on the podcast again.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me, and look to come back 3 more times so I can get my number 5 jacket.
You got it. We've said it before, but it warrants repeating. Implementing VantageScore 4.0 is a win for lenders and consumers. As Tony mentioned, it will create homeownership opportunities for millions of consumers that have been unfairly restricted, and lenders receive more accurate credit scores, which will enable them to reduce risk. The use of these modernized credit score models will enhance risk management while furthering sustainable access to credit for consumers. If you were looking at me in the room, you'd see that I have air quotes, because that's not my quote. That's from FHFA Director Sandra Thompson, and it's well put. I'm Jeff Richardson, and I look forward to our next conversation.
The views and opinions expressed in this episode do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of VantageScore Solutions. Visit VantageScore.com to learn more.